He broke down in public after I read the letter his mistress wrote me out loud. That envelope sat on my kitchen counter for 3 damn days before I had the nerve to touch it. Just a plain white piece of paper addressed to Mrs. Elin Harrington. No return address, no hint at the storm it carried. It felt cursed, like some Pandora's box just waiting to blow up my perfectly staged life. It landed right as I was knee-deep in planning our 20th anniversary party. 2 decades with Lucas, Mr. Big Deal Surgeon, local golden boy. The man I had quite literally built my whole adult life around. And for the past year, he'd been pulling away, blaming it on night shifts and department restructuring. I wanted to believe him, but that Tuesday morning, coffee in hand, nerves already frayed, I finally tore it open. And bam! Perfume. Expensive. Loud. Obnoxious. It hit me before I even read the first word. "Dear Mrs. Harrington," it started, in handwriting that screamed wealth and zero shame. "You don't know me, but I've known your husband intimately for the last 11 months. The mug dropped, crashed onto the cold Italian marble floor that Lucas just had to have in the remodel. Coffee burned my bare legs, but I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I was locked on that letter like it had hypnotized me. 3 full pages, all handwritten, all brutal. The woman's name was Morgan, and she didn't hold back. She spilled everything. How they met at some fancy medical conference in Chicago, how Lucas slipped off his wedding ring before sliding into her booth at the hotel bar, the weekend trips they took while I thought he was out saving lives, the promises he made to leave me after our anniversary once the timing made sense. He trashed me to her too, called me cold, obsessed with my work, said the marriage was just for optics. "But I've seen your socials," she wrote. "I've seen how you look at him. He doesn't deserve either of us." And just like that, my world started to tilt. The last paragraph was still waiting, but it already felt like a damn freight train had slammed into my perfectly stacked life. Morgan included stuff no stranger could ever know. Private, intimate details about Lucas. Stuff like his birthmarks, his weird little breakfast habits. Things only someone who'd slept beside him would know. It erased every shred of doubt I had. "I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this," she ended, "but I thought you deserved to know before celebrating 20 years of lies." I read it 3 times. Every word cut deeper than the last. Her handwriting was flawless, the stationery expensive, like this whole betrayal came gift-wrapped. This wasn't some messy, emotional meltdown. No, this was a surgical strike. One woman to another. My fingers shook as I folded the pages and slid them back into the envelope like I was trying to contain the chaos. But it was too late. The damage was done. I needed to think, fast. The vow renewal was 4 days away. 4 days until we stood in front of 150 people, friends, family, Lucas's hospital board, my old publishing team, people who'd known us since high school. Everyone who thought our marriage was some kind of fairy tale. We were the golden couple, powerhouse surgeon and his perfect wife. I wandered through our 4,000 square foot house, the one I designed, cleaned, and kept up while Lucas climbed the ladder. This was the house where I hosted his fancy dinner parties, pushed my own writing dreams to the back burner, played nurse during his sleepless residency years, and stuck around through all his "I'm not ready for kids" speeches. 20 freaking years. And the man I gave it all to could toss his wedding ring aside like it was just a gym pass. I picked up the phone and called June, my best friend. Kept my voice steady, even though my whole world was cracking apart. "Hey, can you come over?" I asked. "I need your help with something for the party." I didn't tell her yet, but oh, I was about to. Within an hour, June was perched across from me at the kitchen island, her eyes scanning every inch of that letter like it might bite. Her expression shifted fast. Shock, then white-hot rage, then this quiet heartbreak that honestly hurt more than if she'd screamed. "That lying, cheating piece of shit," she muttered under her breath. "Alan, I'm so damn sorry." "Don't be," I said, weirdly calm for someone whose whole life had just been nuked. "I'm not canceling the party." She blinked at me, confused and borderline horrified. "Wait, you're still doing the vow renewal?" "Oh, we're definitely having a ceremony," I said, a slow grin creeping across my face. "Just not the one Lucas thinks we are." And that was the moment it all clicked. Like puzzle pieces that had been screaming at me for months, maybe years. I'd just been too tired or too loyal to see them. The late nights, the phone that suddenly needed a passcode, the mysterious work trips that doubled over the past year, the new cologne I didn't buy, the way he'd tilt his body away when texting, like I couldn't see the guilty twitch in his jaw. Hell, I'd written articles about spotting red flags in relationships. Irony really is a bitch. That night, I reread Morgan's letter again. And like dark water coughing up lost things, the memories came back, hard. 6 months ago, a long, pale blonde hair on his suit jacket. He brushed it off. Probably from the new surgical nurse. He'd shrugged. 3 months ago, a weird charge on our credit card from a jewelry store. I never saw a damn gift. "It's for my mom's birthday," Lucas had said, not even looking up. His mom's birthday was 4 months away. But you know what? The cheating somehow wasn't the sharpest knife. What cut deeper was realizing how slowly, methodically, Lucas had erased me over the years. He chipped away at my self-worth like it was some old paint job. "Your writing's a nice hobby," he'd say whenever I mentioned going back into journalism, "but I need a partner who can hold down the home front." When my mom gently said I seemed off last time she visited, Lucas told me, "She's always been jealous of what we have. Maybe it's best we cut back on those visits." And when I made friends with the wife of another doctor, someone who actually encouraged me to go for my MFA, he bailed on every double date. Said she was a bad influence, always putting dangerous thoughts in my head. Piece by piece, year by year, I'd given up who I was for a man who didn't respect me, just needed me to stay quiet, stay useful, and stay blind. The next morning, I got in my car and headed straight to Lucas's hospital. I knew he'd be elbow deep in someone's chest for the next 4 hours. It was his scheduled surgery block, and that meant I had a clear window to do some digging. I went straight to his assistant, Gwen. She'd always been nice to me over the years, even though Lucas constantly griped that she was slow or disorganized, which now felt more like projection than truth. "Ellen, what a surprise," she said, genuinely smiling. "Lucas is in surgery until at least 2. "Perfect," I replied, stepping into her office and closing the door behind me. "I actually came to ask for your help with something. It's a surprise for our anniversary." Her eyes lit up. "Oh, how sweet. What do you need?" "Lucas misplaced some info from that Chicago conference he went to last September," I said, casually, like I wasn't choking on every word. "Apparently, he wants to reference a presentation from it in his speech. Think you could pull the details for me? Like dates, hotel, anything he submitted or expensed?" Gwen paused. Just for a split second. But I saw it, that flicker of hesitation that told me she knew, or at least suspected. "Sure, let me see what I've got," she said, turning to her screen. While she was clicking around, I leaned in, real casual. "He mentioned meeting someone important there, I think. Name was Morgan, I think. Sounds like she played a key role in his work. I might want to include her in the acknowledgments if that's the case." That's when Gwen's fingers froze, mid-type. She didn't look at me. Didn't blink. Just sat there for a heartbeat too long. "I don't recall anyone named Morgan," she said slowly, her voice suddenly way more careful. "But I can check the attendee list if you'd like." I nodded, watching her like a hawk as she pulled up the files, and avoided my eyes the whole damn time. Gwen eventually printed out a small stack of documents and handed them to me with this tight, forced smile that didn't even try to look real. "Ellen," she said softly as I turned to go, "if you ever need to talk, I'm here." And just like that, I knew. She didn't need to spell it out. Her eyes said it all. She knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. Maybe she even helped Lucas cover his tracks along the way. I walked back to my car, heart pounding like a drumline in my chest. I flipped through the documents right there in the front seat. Yep, Lucas had been at that Chicago conference, but he'd stayed 3 extra nights with 0 official reason. The hotel bill, it screamed guilty. Breakfast for 2, in bed, charged to the room. While I was home thinking he was in an OR saving lives, he was sipping overpriced orange juice with Morgan in a damn hotel robe. That night, Lucas got home late. Big surprise. I handed him a glass of his favorite whiskey, wearing a smile that felt like a rubber mask. It stretched across my face, but underneath, I was barely holding it together. "How's that anniversary speech coming along?" I asked sweetly. "I've been working on mine all day." He loosened his tie, suddenly looking like the collar was choking him. "Still working on it. You know I'm terrible at public speaking." I cocked my head. That's not what Morgan says." The glass stopped mid-air. His eyes snapped to mine, trying to read exactly how much I knew. "Who?" "Morgan," I repeated. "You know, that overachieving surgical nurse with the perfect hair, the one who plans every department happy hour like it's the Oscars. She mentioned your presentation in Chicago really left an impression." And just like that, the fear in his face evaporated, replaced with this weak-ass attempt at relief. "Oh, right," he said, trying to sound casual. "I forgot she was even there." I turned away before he saw my eyes filling with tears. "I'm going to bed early. Big day tomorrow with the final party prep." I walked upstairs slowly, heard him pick up his phone the second he thought I was out of earshot. Voice low, urgent, calling Morgan, no doubt, trying to stitch together a new lie before the old ones came undone. That night, lying next to the stranger I used to call my husband, I finally saw it for what it was. Everything had changed, and there was no going back. For years, I was terrified of losing Lucas, scared to be alone, scared to torch the life we'd built together, the reputation, the house, the whole polished brand of us. But lying there that night, listening to his calm, even breaths like everything was just fine, I realized something gut-punching. I'd already lost what actually mattered. I'd lost me. And just like that, the fear vanished. The next morning, I woke up with a kind of brutal clarity. This wasn't just about busting Lucas for screwing around. This was about taking my voice back, the one he'd slowly muted over the years with backhanded compliments and "you'll understand someday" looks. While he was in the shower, I made a copy of Morgan's letter
and locked the original away in my bank's safety deposit box. Evidence needed to be safe. I wasn't giving him a single inch of room to twist the truth. Then I picked up the phone and called June. "I need you to reach out to everyone coming to the ceremony," I told her. "Don't cancel anything, just make damn sure they show up, especially the board members from Lucas's hospital." There was a long pause. "Are you absolutely sure?" she asked. "More sure than I've ever been about anything," I said, and I meant it. Once Lucas left for work, I headed across town to see Victor Lin, my old law professor turned family friend. I'd helped him edit his textbook years ago, back when I still had career dreams of my own, before Lucas guilt-tripped me into shelving them to support his path. I laid it all out, everything. The affair, the manipulation, the money. I told him how Lucas pushed me to dump my entire inheritance into our shared accounts, always saying, "What's mine is yours," until it wasn't. How he'd suddenly made sure I stayed financially dependent on him. "I'm not out to ruin him," I told Victor, my voice low but steady. "I just want what's fair. And I want the truth to be heard." He nodded, thoughtful. Then his eyes narrowed slightly. "Ellen, did you know Lucas came to me last month? Asked about changing your beneficiary forms?" My stomach dropped.
What? He said you both agreed to name the hospital foundation as the new beneficiary for your life insurance and retirement funds. I told him those changes couldn't happen unless both parties were present. Another lie. Another betrayal. And this one? It wasn't just sneaky. It was dangerous. My blood ran ice cold. "What the hell?" I whispered. Victor looked at me seriously. "Victor told me you both agreed to switch the primary beneficiary on your life insurance and retirement accounts to his hospital foundation." I blinked, trying to process. "He said it was a mutual decision," Victor added, "but I told him those changes couldn't legally happen unless both of you were present." Another lie. Another manipulative move. This wasn't just cheating. This was straight-up calculated betrayal. Victor flipped open his laptop. "Let's talk about what you're actually entitled to," he said. "Then we'll go over your game plan for the ceremony." By the time I walked out of his office, I had a full understanding of my financial rights and a solid, no-bullshit strategy for the event. Victor had already put me in touch with a forensic accountant. That person was going to tear through our financial records like a bloodhound, but I wasn't done yet. My next stop was the hospital. I had to speak with Dr. Keene, the chief of surgery and Lucas's direct boss. We'd crossed paths at a few hospital fundraisers, but Lucas had always made it a point to keep us distant. Claimed Dr. Keene was difficult and too wrapped up in politics. Now I knew he just didn't want me anywhere near someone with power. Dr. Keene greeted me warmly. "Ellen, what a surprise. Everything all right?" "Not exactly," I said, stepping into her office and closing the door behind me. "I need to talk to you. Off the record. It's about Lucas." I spent the next hour laying out just enough to get her attention. No emotional outbursts, just facts. She stayed composed, but I noticed her fingers tightening around her coffee mug. "I had a hunch something was off," she said eventually. "There were red flags when we reviewed the Joe Sumisi grant application. The numbers didn't add up." My head snapped up. "Wait, what?" "The Sumisi Foundation grant," she explained. "Lucas claimed to have already conducted some of the preliminary research, but our department has no record of that work ever happening." And just like that, everything clicked. The strange transfers in our accounts, the sudden extra hours that never matched the hospital's schedule. This wasn't just cheating anymore. This was professional fraud with witnesses. I narrowed my eyes. That's new. Dr. Keene hesitated for just a beat, then leaned in.
It's a high-profile research grant, and Lucas is the lead applicant. But the Sumisi Foundation requires total transparency. Every researcher involved has to submit full financial disclosures. And that's when my brain snapped to the suspicious transactions I'd seen in our accounts, especially the ones that didn't make sense. Dr. Keene must have seen it click in my face, because she leaned forward, voice lower now. Ellen, if you're planning what I think you're planning, you should know something. The hospital board will be attending your anniversary party, including Joe Sumisi himself. I smiled. A slow, steady, ice-cold kind of smile. Perfect, I said. I'm counting on it. But the next step? That one hurt the most. I picked up the phone and called my parents, people who had adored Lucas for 20 years, who still believed the fairy tale. Mom, Dad, I said, trying to keep it together. There's something you need to hear before you get on that plane. I told them everything. No sugarcoating. My mother gasped. My dad? He went quiet. The kind of quiet that only came when he was furious. We'll be on the next flight, Mom said instantly. Tonight. You shouldn't be alone for this. I'm not canceling the ceremony, I told them firmly. In fact, I need you both there, with me 100%.
Whatever you need, my dad said, his voice rough. We've got you, sweetheart. That evening, I sat at my vanity, putting on makeup for our pre-anniversary dinner with close friends. But the face in the mirror, it wasn't the same woman anymore. She looked sharper, steadier. Her eyes weren't full of fear. They were locked in. Lucas came up behind me and placed his hands on my shoulders, like nothing had changed. You look beautiful, he said, leaning down to kiss my neck. I held his gaze in the mirror. I've been working on my vows all day, I said, voice calm. I think everyone's gonna be surprised by what I have to say. He paused. Just for a second, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Maybe suspicion, maybe fear. But he slid right back into character. I can't wait to hear them, he said, smiling. Liar. He lied so smoothly, you'd think he believed it himself. As we drove to the restaurant that night, Lucas reached for my hand. Something that used to make me melt. But now? Now it just felt like part of the act. One more empty gesture in a marriage that was all surface, no soul. I let him hold it anyway. Let him think everything was fine. All the while, my mind was running. Morgan's letter locked away, safe. Victor's legal game plan mapped out. Dr. Keene's heads up about the Sumisi grant. And that forensic accountant already peeling back the layers of Lucas's lies. As we pulled into the parking lot, Lucas glanced over at me. I love you, he said, all soft and sincere. I turned and gave him a smile so thin it could have cut glass. I know exactly how much you love me. And tomorrow, so will everyone else. The day of our anniversary dawned stupidly perfect. Bright sky, crisp air, not a cloud in sight. It felt symbolic, like the universe had cleared the stage for the truth. The ceremony was set for 4 p.m. in the garden of the country club where we'd gotten married 20 years ago. A vow renewal, followed by dinner and dancing in front of 150 guests. Lucas had insisted on going all out. We've earned this celebration, he said, like it was some career milestone. His parents arrived early that morning. His mom's eyes were puffy, but determined. His dad hugged me tighter than usual and whispered, "We've set up separate accounts in your name, just in case." Always the planner, my father-in-law. Lucas was weirdly attentive that morning,
bringing me coffee, checking on the schedule, hovering more than usual. For a second, I wondered if Morgan had tipped him off. Maybe he sensed something was brewing. But his eyes? Same old mirror-polished ego. Same fake charm that had fooled a whole damn hospital board. Around 11 a.m., June showed up with the glam squad. Makeup artist, hairstylist, the works. She gave me a look in the mirror. One that said, "This is it," she said quietly, while they curled and powdered me into the image of the perfect, devoted wife. Everyone's confirmed. The board, the surgical team, even that rep he's been working late with. I nodded, eyes locked on my reflection. And Morgan? She RSVP'd this morning. She's coming. My heart thud hard enough I thought it might crack my ribs, but I didn't flinch, didn't blink. I just kept breathing. By 3:30 p.m., we arrived at the venue. Lucas went ahead to play charming host, grinning at guests like he was still king of the castle. I stayed in the bridal suite, pretending to need final touches. In reality, I was sharpening the blade. Truth was, I wasn't touching up makeup. I was reviewing evidence. Every scrap I'd gathered, Morgan's letter, the bank records, screenshots of sketchy transfers, and the smoking gun. Text messages I'd quietly pulled from our shared cloud account. Turns out Lucas forgot I still had access. Rookie move. At exactly 4 p.m., the music started, and I walked down the aisle alone. The garden was glowing in golden light, the arch covered in overpriced white flowers, everything picture perfect. Lucas stood at the end of the path, smiling like a man who thought he was about to renew his status as husband of the century. Rows of elegant white chairs lined both sides. Guests beamed like they were watching a love story, not the prelude to a takedown. I scanned the crowd. There was Joe Sumisi in the third row, Dr. Keene beside him, Lucas's surgical team, the board, his colleagues, the VIPs, and near the back, a tall, stunning blonde sitting quietly with her head low. Morgan. I knew her face from the secret photos hidden in Lucas's second email account. I knew her handwriting, her perfume, and now, her silence. Our officiant, an old judge and Lucas's regular golf buddy, smiled as I reached the altar. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're here today to celebrate the renewal of vows between Lucas and Elin Harrington. 20 years of partnership, respect, and fidelity." I had to fight back a laugh. Respect? Fidelity? The hypocrisy burned in my throat. Before they exchange their vows, ladies and gentlemen, Lucas and Elin have each prepared something personal to say. Lucas, would you like to begin? Lucas cleared his throat, pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket like this was some wedding Pinterest moment. "Ellen," he began, his voice rich and perfectly projected for the crowd, "20 years ago, I promised to love and cherish you." He went on and on. About gratitude, about how much I've supported his dreams, about how excited he is for the next 20 years together. It was all perfectly measured, emotional in the right spots, confident, polished, and so damn fake it made my skin crawl. But no one else saw it. To them, it was beautiful. People were dabbing their eyes like they were watching a Nicholas Sparks movie. If only they knew what was about to hit. He folded his speech with a smile that nearly made me throw up. And then the judge turned to me. "Ellen, would you like to share your vows?" I smiled gently, stepping forward. Oh, I absolutely would. When Lucas wrapped up his big emotional monologue, the crowd was a mess. Sniffling, tearing up, utterly moved. Everyone except me. The judge turned toward me. Ellen, would you like to share your vows? Yes, I said, my voice steady. I would. I stepped away from Lucas, turned slightly to face the guests, and reached into my clutch. Instead of reading the note cards I'd prepped, I pulled out something far more powerful. Morgan's letter. I was going to write something heartfelt, but recently I received a much more honest reflection of our marriage. I think it deserves to be heard. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Lucas's expression shift from confusion to panic. He took a small step toward me, but it was already too late. I lifted the letter and read, loud enough for everyone, even the ones in the back, to hear. Dear Mrs. Harrington, you don't know me, but I've known your husband intimately for the last 11 months. The crowd gasped as one. Chairs creaked. Someone dropped their champagne flute. I kept going. The vacations, the excuses, the secret promises Lucas made to leave me, the way he mocked me behind my back. Lucas's face went bone white. Ellen, stop, he hissed. This is crazy. But I didn't even blink. I read the part about their intimate details, the things no woman should ever have to hear read out loud on her anniversary. That was the moment Lucas snapped. He lunged at me, eyes wild, going for the letter. That's enough, he barked. But he never got close. My father and Victor Lynn were on their feet in seconds, stepping between us like trained security. The whole crowd erupted. Gasps, whiskers, the sound of chairs scraping as people stood to watch the train wreck unfold in real time. I turned to face the guests fully. Lucas, I said, loud enough to silence the chatter. Maybe you'd like to explain to our family, our friends, your colleagues, and the entire hospital board? Oh, and Mr. Joe Sumise sitting right there in the third row? Why funds from our joint account were transferred to an offshore account last month? I tilted my head. Which, by the way, just so happens to match the exact amount of the Sumise Foundation grant. That was the moment Dr. Keene stood up. Lucas, is this true? And in that moment, his whole face crumbled. The charm vanished. The polish cracked. The panic came rushing in like a tidal wave, drowning the image of the man everyone thought they knew.
This is a private matter, Lucas stammered, voice cracking under pressure. Really? I cut in, sharp as glass. Private. I took a step forward. Tell me, Lucas, is it private that you've been falsifying research data? Is it private that you've been funneling grant money into a ghost account? Or maybe it's just privately living a double life? The crowd had gone dead silent. I turned back to face everyone. The surgeons, the hospital board, Joe Sumise, the friends who thought we were #couple goals. I'm sorry you all had to see this, I said, my voice steady. But I'm done pretending. I'm done lying for him. For years, I stood by Lucas's side, while he chipped away at my confidence, my career, my identity. I gave up my dreams to build his. I defended him when people warned me. I poured my inheritance into our shared life, while he planned his escape behind my back. People were now fully on their feet, turning, whispering, scanning for reactions. Joe Sumise was already whispering something urgent to Dr. Keene. Lucas's colleagues looked like they'd been sucker punched, some stunned, others grimly unsurprised. And then I saw her.
Morgan. She was slipping quietly out the side aisle, doing her best to disappear unnoticed. But our eyes met, just for a second. No smugness, no guilt, just quiet, tired truth. She gave me the tiniest nod before vanishing into the crowd. I turned back to Lucas, who hadn't moved. Frozen, shell-shocked. And for the first time, I saw him for who he really was. Not a top-tier surgeon, not some charming pillar of the community. No. Just a scared, insecure man who built his entire image on control, deception, and manipulation.
And as the weight of it all, the public exposure, the career fallout, the financial ruin, came crashing down, Lucas Harrington, the man everyone once respected, started crying. Not the quiet kind. I'm talking full-bodied sobs, shoulders shaking, face twisted, the kind of cry that makes everyone in the room suddenly feel deeply, deeply uncomfortable. Right there, in front of board members, co-workers, old friends, and the woman he used to call his wife, he came undone. These weren't quiet tears. They were raw, gut-wrenching sobs that ripped out of Lucas like he'd finally realized he couldn't control a damn thing anymore. He doubled over right there at the altar, completely shattered, in front of everyone who'd once looked up to him. His hospital board, who were already mentally drafting their investigation, his colleagues, who used to admire him, our friends, who once told me how lucky I was to have him, I didn't flinch. "I've filed for divorce," I said calmly, but the silence made sure everyone heard it like a bomb going off. "The papers were served to your office this morning." I took a breath. "I've also submitted proof of financial misconduct to the hospital board and to the Sumizi Foundation." And with that, I took off my wedding ring and placed it on the podium. "This marriage," I said, locking eyes with Lucas, "has been a performance for a long time. Today's show is over." Then I turned, lifted my head, and walked up the aisle, alone. The whispers rose behind me, gasps, shocked faces, phones already buzzing in pockets. But with every step I took, I felt it. 20 years of silence, shame, and sacrifice falling away like a weight I didn't realize I was carrying. By the time I reached the end, my parents were beside me. So was June. Victor Lin was already dialing on his phone, probably coordinating the next wave of legal moves. Business mode activated. Lucas was still standing there, crumpled and ruined. A man finally watching the empire he built on lies go up in smoke. What followed became known, in our social circle, as the revelation. And the months after that, they were somehow both harder and easier than I'd ever imagined. Harder because tearing apart a 20-year marriage meant slicing through legal red tape, financial ties, and emotional landmines. But easier too, because with each document signed, each account separated, each string snipped, I felt more myself than I had in decades. The divorce was swift. Lucas, desperate to contain the damage, agreed to a generous settlement. The hospital launched a full-scale review of his research and finances. He was suspended pending investigation. The Sumizi Foundation yanked his grant application immediately and opened their own audit. Reporters called, headlines brewed, rumors swirled, but I refused every single interview. Let them speculate. I didn't owe anyone anything anymore. Instead of chasing headlines or revenge, I turned inward. I didn't just rebuild my life, I rebuilt myself. 3 months after that unforgettable day in the garden,
I sat across from Victor Lin in his office, signing the final divorce papers. My hand didn't even tremble. As I capped the pen, he slid a business card toward me. "Editor-in-chief at Berkeley Press," he said. "She read your book proposal. She's interested." I blinked. "Wait, what proposal?" "The one about how high-achieving women get reduced to side characters in their own lives," he said with a grin. "You've been working on it for months." "I never submitted that," I muttered, confused. "June did, with your notes and a few sample chapters. Said you gave her permission." I hadn't, but leave it to June to push me when I couldn't push myself. 6 months after the explosion, I moved into a new apartment in the city. Light-filled, modern, overlooking the park. The kind of place Lucas would have hated, too bohemian, not classy enough for a surgeon's wife. I filled it with color, with art, with messy stacks of books. It wasn't curated. It was me. One crisp fall evening, I hosted my first real dinner. Just June, my parents, Victor and his wife, and Dr. Keene, who'd gone from acquaintance to ally to something like family. Later that night, Dr. Keene and I stood on the balcony, wine in hand. "Have you heard from him?" she asked softly. I shook my head. Not directly. His lawyer said he took a position in Phoenix. "And Morgan?" I smiled, just a little. "She emailed. She's back in Chicago, working on her PhD." She apologized again. "Do you forgive her?" Keene asked. I thought for a moment. "I think I do." She was lied to too, manipulated just like I was. But in the end, she did the right thing. That letter, her letter, was the match that lit the fire I needed. Painful, yes, but freeing. 1 year after the fallout, my book was published, and it hit the bestseller list on launch day. That same morning, a small package appeared on my doorstep. Inside, a vintage fountain pen. No note, except one simple line, written in familiar handwriting. "For signing your next contract. Some endings are really beginnings." It wasn't signed, but I didn't need a signature to know who it came from. That night, I sat on my balcony, glass of wine in hand, watching the sun sink behind the skyline. The city shimmered gold. And for the first time in a long time, I began stitching myself back together, piece by piece. The woman who kept silent, who shrank to fit into someone else's story, she was gone. And the woman I'd become, she was the author now. I had spent years clinging to a marriage that only looked good on paper, sacrificing my voice, my ambitions, my entire self for a man who never really saw me. But that moment when I stood up in front of everyone, pulled out that letter, and let the truth fly, that was the day everything shifted. The day I stopped shrinking, the day I stopped performing, the day silence turned into power. As I stood there on my balcony, the city lights blinking alive below me, my phone rang. It was my literary agent, practically buzzing with excitement. "They're calling you the voice of a movement," she said. "Foreign rights are selling fast. Women everywhere are feeling this." We talked numbers, markets, translations, but when the call ended, I just stood still, holding the phone against my chest, staring out into the night. Far in the distance, I could see the hospital where Lucas and I had spent so many evenings. Gala dinners, fundraisers, endless name-tag events where I smiled like a trophy and was introduced only as Dr. Harrington's wife.
But now? Now I was Elin. No titles, no attachments, just a woman who told the truth and burned the lie to the ground. I raised my glass in a quiet toast, not to Lucas, not even to revenge, but to Morgan, wherever she was. To the letter that blew it all open, to the words that wrecked the illusion and let the truth breathe. Because some truths, once spoken, refuse to be silenced again. Some letters don't just change your life, they set you free. And sometimes, just sometimes, watching the man who broke you collapse in front of a crowd is exactly what it takes to finally heal.